welcome back, or welcome to those who are new here to my podcast called The Mutant Minds. I'm Cecilia, and I'm here with Milgram.
Hi.
And you.
Hi.
And today's episode is partially psychology mixed with true crime vibes and 100% mind-blowing.
Guys, she meant 100% messed up.
I mean, yeah, you could call it like that. And so, we will be diving into an experiment that tested human obedience by forcing people to literally shock other people.
Wow.
And spoiler alert, a lot of them did. Way more than you'd expect.
So, without further ado, let's talk about the
Milgram Obedience Experiment.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Why did this experiment even happen in the first place?
Well, for me to answer that question, we will need to rewind in the past and bring us back to the Nuremberg war criminals trials post-World War II.
And that's basically the Nazis, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Back in 1960,
Yeah.
the people were really struggling to understand how something like the Holocaust could have possibly happened. Like, how could so many people have followed such horrific orders?
Right? And myself, I can't even wrap my mind around it. And I bet that's what Stanley Milgram was also thinking. Because, Stanley Milgram was a social psychologist professor at Yale University at the time. And so he had this theory. Maybe it wasn't about evil people. Maybe, it was just about ordinary people who are capable of terrible things when they're just obeying.
Well, no way. You're telling me that's how he designed a now famous experiment to find out?
Yep, you got that right.
Wow.
And so in 1961, so he wanted to put his theory to test, and so he wanted to find out just to what extent will individuals be willing to, obey to authority, even if their conscience was telling them that they were doing something morally wrong.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How did he even manage to get people to participate in the first place?
That's a good question.
Well, you see, deception sure is a wonderful thing.
No, I think to remember reading an article online saying that he recruited participants through newspaper advertisement, and he was targeting men, aged from 20 to 50 years old, and from a variety of of careers. So you had engineers, salesmen, anything except students or professors studying in psychology.
Probably because they will find what was going on.
Yeah, they catch on. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not a wrong take. Yeah. After all, he did present the experiment as a study on memory and learning at Yale University, with no mention of the electric shocks or obedience at all.
Yeah.
And honestly, it makes sense. It
would
would have ruined the setup.
Yeah, the setup. Yeah.
Well, were they paid this? Because not gonna lie, if I were them, if the money was on the line, I wouldn't have even bothered to reading that section of the newspaper.
Yes, they were paid around 4.50 USD with whether they completed the task or not.
That's around $6.25.
That's
That's nothing.
That's nothing.
You can. I don't know what they thought it was worth it.
Guys, listen. Back in the 60s, it was a pretty decent amount. I know today it doesn't sounds like a lot, okay? But back time, it was a really good amount. And that's basically how he managed to convince 40 men.
40?
Exactly. 40 men to participate.
Oh my.
And it took place in the basement of Lincoln Training Hall, given it that official sciences
The credibility.
credibility that makes people trust the setup even more.
And then?
After all the, participants are recruited, and they all met another participants, which we can call, a confederate.
A confederate, which was basically an actual experiment, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
basically an active experiment. And after that, all the participants were asked to draw slips of paper to decide whether to get the role of teacher or learner.
Pause. But it was all rigged. It was rigged so that the real participant always got a role of teacher and the confederate the role of learner. What is that?
Now picture this. You're in the 1960s in a basement of an Ivy League school.
That's eerie.
You're playing the role of a teacher in a memory pairing quiz game. Your partner, which is your learner, had a full set of role pairs to memorize. During the quiz, you would say the first word of the pair, for example, blue, And then you'll offer your learner for option sky, which is a correct
Mhm.
answer in our situation, ink, oil, and tree. Your learner then had to choose the correct match. And at each wrong take, you'd be told to administer a shock of 15 volts by flipping a single switch.
One single?
Yes, increasing the voltage by 15 volts again each time.
And so I assume at one wrong answer is up. Like, you can only hear the pain that your learner had to go through.
Yes.
Their screams, their bangs on the walls, their beggings to stop, and eventually just their silence.
Yes. You just mentioned the bangings and the walls and everything, but do you guys know what the wildest part is?
What, there's more?
Is that most people kept going.
No, you gotta be kidding me.
Like you
No.
thought it'd stop, right? But
Oh
they
my
didn't.
And it's not because they were evil or anything. It's just there's this guy, the experimenter,
Mhm.
in a full lab coat, looking super confident yet calm, and so the teacher would unconsciously trust him.
Makes sense.
Okay, yeah. And if the teacher refused to administer the required shock voltage, the experimenter will try to push him to continue by saying sentences such as, "You have to keep going," or "The experiment requires you to continue."
I'm just thinking about it.
What?
It's terrifying how easy it is to obey when someone sounds like they're in charge.
Yeah. I mean, that's so now that you think about it. You know, the teacher wasn't even deciding on their own to shock the learner.
Mm-mm.
They were quite literally being told to do so. And so some of them would then adopt this mentality, you know, like, hey, it's actually not my fault. Like, I'm just following instructions from someone of higher authority. And the results of this way of thinking, it's honestly jaw-dropping. Guys, can just try to guess the percentage, the amount of participants who completed the test.
If it's more than 50%, that's crazy.
How many?
18?
18?
80, sorry.
80?
80? I'm saying 80.
Well, it's more than that, but less than that. It's actually 65% of them.
I expect more.
And that's only 2/3 of them who went all the way up to 450 volts. That's the highest setting on the machine.
450 volts?
Yes.
That's lethal enough to kill someone.
No way.
Or at least cause several burns, muscles contractions, cardiac fibrillation.
And like lifelong injuries are
Lifelong injuries, guys.
That's wild.
It's not a joke.
Okay, and the other participant, they still went really far, like past 300 volts,
Ooh.
even though they were clearly stressed out, sweating, shaking, nervous, laughing. Some were basically having breakdown mid-experiment.
And they were still flipping switches, guys. That's wild.
No.
It's wild. It kind of makes you wonder what you would do in that situation if you were in the shoes of the teacher. Think
Me?
about it.
No way. I would have yeeted out of there the second they handed me that
Really?
weird, shocking machine. Like, you
How you
want
know?
me to electrocute a stranger because he forgot a word pair? Are you serious? Are you nuts? Like, there's no point in doing that. Absolutely not. I don't care if you're in a lab coat, a full-on massive spacesuit. If you want me to electrocute someone for science, I'm gonna start asking you questions.
Is that insert rebellion that I see?
100%. The moment I hear screams, I'm unplugging the machine and getting out of there.
So, you're not even a little bit tempted? Just a little bit?
Cecilia, tempted to traumatize someone, to
Okay,
potentially
my bad.
kill him. No, thank you. And I'm taking my $4 in the way out.
Get your money!
But how about you, Yi?
What about me? Well, honestly, I would keep going. Not because there some guy in a full lab coat told me to. It's just because I want to know what would happen after. Like, how far can this go? What's at 450 volts? Does the machine break? Does the guy explode? I don't know. I'm not following order. I'm just curious.
Well, it's valid.
Well, and I wouldn't have felt anything like, oh, that guy is screaming, or fortunate. Or what?
You just like dissociate, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's a social, and I would take it like I'm pressing button machine. No
Okay.
emotion, just task completion.
That's scary.
She's scaring me.
Yeah.
Wow, good.
No, it's not good.
Anyways, next question.
How about you, Cecilia?
Well, honestly, I feel like I also would have stopped pretty early on. Like, generally, the moment I would hear like my learner scream and beg to stop, I would just feel sick to my stomach. Like, I just can't bring myself to justify it. Even if the experimenter would tell me that, oh yeah, like, it's the experiments for science. Because for me, hurting someone, even in the name of science, just feels so wrong. And I don't think like I could also live with the growth that I push someone past their limits.
Yeah.
But at the same time, guys, hear me out.
Hear me out
Hear me
from
out.
Cecilia.
Hear me out. If it just so happened that the person on the other side of the room was a terrible human being, like the type, to take pleasure and cheating on his partner and then brags about it, or just being blatantly, sexist and passing off a joke, just spreading hatred in the world, maybe I'd hesitate a little bit less. I'm not saying that I'll go like full on 450 volts, but a little pain doesn't seem too bad.
Fair enough. And honestly, guys, a lot of people wish that the experiment had never been allowed in the first place. When Milgram published his study, you said in 1963, right? Well, it caused major backlash.
Yeah, and like people were shocked, like pun fully intended.
Wow.
But really, like, they were seriously disturbed, and not just by the results, but more so by how the experiment was done, and that hit a nerve hard.
It makes sense, honestly. That's
It
wild. But you know what? Is that the problem in this thing is that the ethical standards, they just weren't there yet.
Yeah, it was in the 90s, right? Like, just
And
not developed point.
They thought it actually killed someone, hurt someone, and they had no idea, absolutely no idea it was fake until the very end.
And that's a lot, right? And I can imagine that. But rest assured, like today, that would never fly. Like if Milgram wanted to do this same experiment like in the 2025, you definitely need a full, informed consent, a clear explanation of any, potential emotional distress, and definitely a psychologist on standby to debrief participants properly.
But back then, the ethical standards just weren't there yet. I said it before. And Milgram's experiment basically forced the entire field of psychology to rethink how human subjects should be treated.
But that's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good thing.
And actually, guys, it was after this specific experiment that the American Sociological Association, known as ASA, right?
Yeah.
Adopted its first ethic code in 1970.
That's good.
In a way, it pushed science forward, but it's also crossed a line, and that's the dilemma. Like, we learned something incredibly powerful about obedience, but at what cost?
The scariest part is, it's not what the people did in that experiment, but how easy it was to get them in that position in the first place.
And like in the end, Milgram didn't just teach us about obedience. He literally held up a mirror to show us just how easy it is for us to trade our moralities for instruction. How easy it is to us, to shift from human to tool if someone important enough and with enough authority told us to do. And that's...
Some people went all the way in, others walked out. But the truth is, nobody really know what they would do.
Yeah, we could just say it like this, but we actually don't.
Until they're sitting in that chair, hand hovering over the switch, hearing someone scream from the other side of the wall.
And that's what makes uncomfortable, because the experiment may be over, but the question stand here. Still stand.
Just to what extent will individuals be willing to obey to authority when asked to perform actions conflicting with their conscience?
Thanks for smiling with us.
We'll catch you next time, hopefully not in a lab experiment.
Bye!